explain just some of the modalities and some of the historical protocols that flow after the passing of a pope. And Father Desmond Nair is the parish priest of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church. Good morning, Father, and welcome to the program. Again, our condolences on the passing of Pope Francis, but what a great opportunity to understand the inner workings of the Roman Catholic Church and what happens during this leadership transition period at the Vatican, known as the interregnum, where there is a sede vacante or vacant seat. This standardization of the election procedure, I believe, stretches all the way back to 1274. Tell us more about those early historical years.
You know, in the Middle Ages, 1274, you mentioned that date, and you've certainly done your homework, well done, is that it was a process that the church put together in order to replace the Pope who had died, or the Pope who, as we had experienced with Pope Benedict, had retired or resigned. And so it is a process that has developed over a period of time with modifications that have been made by Pope John Paul II, slight modifications made by Pope Benedict, to what it is today. It's a rather long document. I had a look at it last night that outlines this entire process and procedure for the funeral of a pope and for the election of a new pope. The conclave, as it is called, conclave that comes from the word to be locked in. And that's what happens with the cardinals, is that they are locked into conclave. They will celebrate a mass after the requiem for Pope Francis on Saturday. They will celebrate a mass probably around the 6th of May in St. Peter's. It is a mass to the Holy Spirit, to ask for the help and guidance of the Holy Spirit. And from there, they will go and process to the Sistine Chapel, where they will literally be locked in for the time and the process of the conclave.
I want to pause there, Father Nair, just before we go deeper into the conclave itself, because it is really fascinating, the process that is underway in the lead up to that election process, the election of the Roman Catholic Church's 267th Pope. An Irish-American Archbishop is now the acting head of the Vatican, and this is Kevin Farrell, the man who announced the death of Pope Francis and serves as the camerlengo, the person who's running the church in the meantime, but is also key in helping organize what you're describing to us now, the conclave. How important is this transitory role that he is playing?
Well, it's very crucial, because the seat is vacant, as you said, and someone needs to be in charge, someone needs to be in control. And that is his primary responsibility at this time, to ensure that all of these protocols and processes are put in place. And it is interesting that it's an Irish-American cardinal in what used to be a very Italian-dominated Curia and Vatican City, government. So that's his responsibility, and he will ensure, he will have already probably put all of these processes in place, that there will be a seamless transition now from Pope Francis into whoever is going to be elected in the next few weeks.
So let's go into that election again, Father Nair. And the conclave, as you've just shared with us, where the new Pope will be elected, comes from the Latin conclavis, a locked room. Walk us through who will be in that room, in the Sistine Chapel, and what happens there.
So we can talk about the College of Cardinals, that's all the cardinals, which would include Cardinal Brisbane, who was celebrating Mass at Christ the King, and it will include Cardinal Napier, who is the retired Archbishop of Durban. But because Cardinal Napier is over the age of 80, he is no longer eligible to participate in the conclave. And that was a rule that was brought in a few decades ago, that the cardinal electors have to be under the age of 80. So they will all celebrate that Mass in St. Peter's, And then the cardinal electors will proceed to the Sistine Chapel, where they will be locked in for that process. And that process will take place with 4 ballots every day, in the morning and in the afternoon. And what is really needed is a clear 2/3 majority for any particular individual. But what will happen, Imam, before they celebrate that Mass and go into conclave, the cardinals will be busy in discussion in regard to the state of the church. And then part of that process will be the kind of person they need to fit and fill the shoes of Pope Francis to take the church forward and to pastor and to minister the church as its chief shepherd in the decade ahead and in the time ahead. And so it'll also provide them an opportunity to listen to each other and to get to know each other, so that there's a clarity of thinking in terms of possible candidates that they will be processing during this time. With those ballots in the Sistine Chapel, in each of those ballots, they will declare, "I elect as Supreme Pontiff," and they will place the name of that person. It's folded into and then placed into a chalice. There are 3 cardinals who are chosen to count the ballots. There's a whole process of threading a needle and a thread through the ballots as they are counted, so that everything is done precisely. And then the result of that particular ballot is announced. When there is a clear 2/3 majority, it will obviously be a run-up between 2 individuals who survive the preliminary ballots. Then, when there is that clear 2/3 majority, then the Dean of the College of Cardinals will ask the Pope-elect, "Do you accept?" And he has to give his acceptance. And once he has given his acceptance, then he is asked what name will he choose. And that is entirely up to him to choose a name, whether he wants to be Francis II or John Paul III or Benedict XVII, or to look at those more recent popes that we have had.
Yeah.
But that name will also indicate the type of pontificate that he plans to have. With Francis, it was so clear that he chose the name of Saint Francis of Assisi, and we have seen over the last 12 years how he has imitated that example of Saint Francis of Assisi, of course, all on the example of Jesus himself.
Yeah. Around that
and
humility,
that happens,
around the humility and the simplicity, Father Nair. Before we move forward to when there is, a clear vote, and the Dean of the College of Cardinals asks the incumbent, "Do you accept your canonical election as Supreme Pontiff?" There is this thing that has really fascinated society and those who are outside the Catholic Church, and this is black smoke, white smoke. After each voting session, these ballots are burned. Just, again, walk us through that, because this is a moment, as I said at the beginning, for those of us who would not been a part of this process to really understand, some of the mystique and the historical intrigue or the ritualism around each of these milestones towards the election of a pope.
Long before the days of social media and instant news communication, the cardinals had to communicate to the crowds gathered in the piazza whether the ballot had been successful or not. And the means to do that was to burn straw in a little room off the Sistine Chapel. And the black smoke indicated that it was an inconclusive ballot, and the white smoke indicates that a pope has been elected. And so we saw that with Pope Francis in 2013, that all of a sudden the chimney atop the Sistine Chapel billowed with white smoke. And when that happened, there was a cheer that went up with the crowd. So it's just an ancient form of communication. It doesn't have any particular spiritual significance or anything like that. It was just to get the news out to the people gathered. And of course, today it's not just the people gathered in the piazza, it is also the cameras of the world that will be focused on that chimney.
the original social media, so to speak, to take a leaf out of your book, Father Nair. All right, so then that really important process happens. Once we see, pardon me, that white smoke, we understand that a new pope has been elected. We've spoken about the Dean of the College of Cardinals asking the Pope whether he, accepts this particular role, and then, as you've also shared, will then choose a papal name. You talked about, and we've shared a lot over the last day or two since Pope Francis's passing, the reason that he chose Saint Francis of Assisi as his name, and he certainly seemed to live in that vein, or in that example throughout the course of his life. I was sharing his will with our viewers as well, where he wanted to be buried, how he lived, how simple he wanted everything to be. So then what happens? You have that moment after the new pope, or the pope-elect, is dressed in his papal white and then led to the room of tears to pray and prepare. What happens after that point?
From that point, he then is led to the balcony of St. Peter's to greet the people and to greet the world. But first, there is an announcement made. It's called Habemus Papam. We have a pope. And then the name of the pope is announced, his actual name, his baptismal name is announced. And once his name is announced, you will see the reaction of the people, because obviously in the next 2 weeks, there'll be a lot of speculation about who the more popular candidates are. With Pope Francis, I have to say I was watching that and I had absolutely no idea who he was. I'd not really heard about him, although he had obviously made an impression on the cardinals in the preparation for the conclave. So, and then it will be announced what name he has chosen. Once that has been announced, then the new pope gets to greet the people in the piazza and the people around the world, and then he gives them a papal blessing. His first papal blessing is given to them. Then he returns to converse with the cardinals, and he can choose how long he wants to keep them there together. He may want to spend some time with them outlining his policies or his ideas or listening to them. That's the process that will follow.
I want us to pause, if we may, Father Desmond Nair, just to listen to some of the audio from inside the area where the Pope's body is now lying in state. And we'll take our viewers live there for just a moment.
Santa Desia, Jesu infante, ora pro eo, Sancte Antoni, ora pro eo, Sancte Benedicte, ora pro eo, Sancte Francisce, ora pro eo, Sancte Dominice, ora pro eo, Sancte Ignati de Loyola, ora pro eo, Sancte Francisce, ora pro eo, Sancte Aloisi, ora pro eo, Sancte Filippe, ora pro eo, Sancte Vincenti, ora pro eo, Sancte Ioannes Baptista, ora pro eo, Sancte Gaspar, ora pro eo, Sancte Vincenti, ora pro eo, Sancte Ioannes Maria, ora pro eo, Sancte Ioannes, ora pro eo, Sancte Pie de Pietrelcina, ora pro eo, Sancta Scholastica, ora pro eo, Santa Clara, ora pro eo, Santa Virgita.
live picture there from St. Peter's Basilica, where Pope Francis's body, his human remains, are now lying in state in the Vatican City. To the other side of your screen, live picture from the Cathedral of Christ the King here in Johannesburg. A special service underway at the moment. And of course, one of our own, as Father Nair has been telling us, will also be part of that conclave, Cardinal Breslin. Let's return to that conversation as we continue to learn more about what we're going to experience in the next few days with parish priest of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church, Father Desmond Nair. Father Nair, I really, perhaps just to pause for a second, and you've been sharing such incredible knowledge with us, is your feelings in this moment as you watch this sort of final journey of the human remains, the last remains of Pope Francis, in the context of this really magnificent and magnanimous life that he has led?
I feel an immense sense of gratitude that for the past few years we have worked under the leadership and the example of Pope Francis. He has epitomized the life, the work, the mission, the teaching of Jesus, to bring it down to the man in the street, to the care and compassion and concern for the poor and the needy. And that's been on the one side. On the other side, he has demonstrated such clear leadership in the church. Leadership in terms of the reorganization of the dicasteries at the Vatican, the appointment of people, including women from around the world, as you mentioned earlier on, Cardinal Farrell from the United States, an Irish Catholic. We've seen in the last few consistories when the Pope chooses new cardinals, that he has chosen cardinals from a broad variety of countries right across the globe, particularly acknowledging the church in the third world. And that's where the church is growing in great numbers, in Asia, in Africa, in South America. We also observed, I think it was last year, when he undertook a pastoral visitation to Mongolia. And Mongolia only has about 1,500 Catholics. The entire Catholic population was able to fit into one mass in Mongolia. And Mongolia has a cardinal. So there's this broad representation of the church, whereas the College of Cardinals in the past tended to be dominated by cardinals from Europe. Not that there's anything wrong with cardinals from Europe, but Pope Francis has acknowledged that there is a bigger, broader, wider universal church.
And it's a theme that's been recurring over the last few days, not only his interest in emerging countries, but traveling as much as he could to live out his intention of inclusivity right at the very start of his papacy. We've had extensive conversations over the last few days about how he's opened up the way, in a sense, for the LGBTIQA plus communities. You talked about making sure that just in from a synodal perspective as well, that there's inclusivity all the way from cardinals who are working in communities on the ground to the laity in those communities. So there's a far more inclusive voice in the Catholic Church. We talked about the Roman Curia, which is the opening up of the administration of the Roman Catholic Church, throwing open its finances to create more transparency. And one of the concerns we share this morning, even as the Catholic Church now prepares for that conclave, is will the person who wears the mantle of the Pope, the successor of Pope Francis, will he be the person to continue with that work of transformation, sacred transformation that Pope Francis had begun, or would there be a different direction in which he goes? What's your sense, Father Nair, on the individual influence of a Pope on how the Roman Church is perceived in any era?
Well, Pope Francis set a clear path. He has chosen most of the cardinals who are going to be cardinal electors. I have such a strong feeling that they will follow in that path that he has created, that whoever is elected will try and balance. That is the difficult task, to balance all sides, the conservatives and the liberals and the middle of the roads, etc. But a trend has been established in terms of reaching out to the marginalized and those who even the church previously kind of rejected, that everyone is welcome. And Pope Francis made such a point of that, especially at World Youth Day in Lisbon, that everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome. And it would be really difficult for his successor not to follow on that path. I think it would, whoever is chosen to replace Pope Francis will, in the interest of the church, not in the interest of himself, but in the interest of the church whom he serves, will have to follow that path. And this year, Pope Francis declared the theme for our Jubilee year, 2025, 2025 years after the birth of Jesus, as the theme is Pilgrims of Hope. And I think that is where the church is at the moment. That's certainly where I'm at. I have great hope that whoever will succeed him will be himself a pilgrim of hope.
I want to go back to the eligibility of those who can be considered as Pope Francis's successor. How does that process evolve? Can every cardinal across the world throw their hat in the ring?
Well, any male Catholic is actually eligible to be the Pope. It's not just from the cardinal electors, and it's not just from the College of Cardinals. So the cardinal electors could elect someone who is not a cardinal elector, someone who is over the age of 80, or they could elect anybody else for that matter. The choice is entirely theirs. But if one looks at the trend over the last few centuries, it has always come from the College of Cardinals, but not necessarily from the cardinal electors themselves.
And will we have a woman pope ever? You did say that all of those in the room would be male Catholics.
Yes.
Given. Well, I mean, we're now electing the 267th pope, and there's never been a woman.
No.
Is it allowed?
No, it's not allowed. But who knows? In the future, we live in a world of change, and we live in a church of change as well. And we have seen during the pontificate of Pope Francis that change being implemented by him, appointing women to head dicasteries in the Vatican, and speaking about the possibility of woman deacons. And so there is a process that will happen. The process of the involvement and participation of women as part of the church, as an integral part of the church. The process possibly in the future of women deacons, and possibly thereafter of women priests, and then women bishops. And who knows where that process will take the church. Perhaps not in my time, but yes, it is a possibility.
Well, I hope it's in your lifetime, Father Desmond Nair. And again, I wonder what, some of the other, the women, I don't know what the terms are essentially, but those who are already deaconesses or who play a leadership role in the church have to say about this, the kind of change that we're talking about, who knows, one day results in a female pope. But as you say, it's a journey. It's going to be a long journey to there. We are sharing picture as well of events around our country that are commemorating and also celebrating the life of Pope Francis. What are these events called, these prayer services, Father Nair, before I let you go, such as the one that we're seeing at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Johannesburg? Is it a Requiem Mass?
You can call it a Requiem Mass. It is more precisely a memorial Mass for Pope Francis. And all around the country, in my own parish last night, we had a memorial Mass for Pope Francis. In the Archdiocese of Durban this evening, there will be in the cathedral a memorial mass for Pope Francis. And so it's the whole process of Catholics gathering around. What we do every day of the week is to celebrate Mass, to hear God's word, and to celebrate the Eucharist. And in the context of that, to pray for the repose of the soul of Pope Francis, and to give thanks for his life of ministry and service to the Church as a priest, as a bishop, as the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, and in the last 12 years as the Supreme Pontiff, as the chief shepherd of the Church. So it's a memorial Mass.
Well, Father Desmond Nair, thank you so much for spending this time with us this morning, just explaining the intricacies of the protocol that flows from the moment of Pope Francis's passing to the election of a new pope. We really do appreciate your time and your insights. Again, accept our condolences. But as many have expressed, this was a life well lived, and a legacy that will certainly be unforgettable. That was Father Desmond Nair there, the parish priest of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church. I'd like us